dance. Cool.
Do you want to jump quicker?
Oh, cool. What do I do? Just press that and it.
Turn it the right way around.
Where am I pointing it?
Just the room.
Cool. Seems to work. Cool. Hello, everybody. I'm Mark. I'm part of Paper, one of the directors. Cam introduced us earlier. We're a research and design studio. We're based just down Kelham Island, so not far away at all. I'm going to talk about, it's sort of like a case study, but I'm going to gloss over quite a few details. If there's any bits that are missing, just pick me up on it at the end and feel free to ask me some questions. So I'm going to talk about engaging the public in complex issues about the internet. So it's quite a hot topic at the minute. There's a lot of things in the news about various complex issues such as artificial intelligence that a lot of people just don't know much about and are terrified of. At the same time, some people are also really excited about them. This is the charity that we worked with. They're called DotEveryone. They're based down in London. They're a sort of digital think tank. They like to challenge the industry on some of these issues. So artificial intelligence for them at the minute is a really hot topic. And they want to make sure that companies like Google and Facebook are sort of designing in an ethical way, in a way that maybe humans can hopefully understand what's happening. This was a very quick project. This is maybe 2-3 weeks worth of work. We dove into it head first, and I'm going to try and talk through some of the things that we learned, some of the things that we did. This is sort of where we started. So what everyone wanted is to try and use sort of digital technologies, digital tools, and digital skills to try new methods of public engagement. Their argument or their debate is that a lot of these companies are using sort of old methods of public engagement, such as focus groups and citizen juries. What everyone wanted to do is try and design in a really, really quick way new methods of engaging with the public. So can we use skills in the digital industry to improve that? Again, reacting to trends in the industry such as artificial intelligence and asking the question, are we engaging the public in the right way on some of these issues? So what if we could do better through the digital industry? This is specifically what they wanted to focus on. So what does 21st century public engagement look like? How can tech make public engagement more modern? And what are the systemic issues 21st century engagement must consider? So what we did is we sort of developed some scenarios together. And those scenarios were sort of like made up scenarios. So in a workshop we did in London, we tried to work out what was a complex issue that we could engage the public with. I think in the end we came up with, I forgot which one it is now. I've not written it down either. One of the ideas is, could citizen scoring be a new social mobility lever? So I think that's in China. They're trialling, or they might even implemented, a way of scoring citizens based on their behaviour in cities. And if they do good things, they get a good score. If they do bad things, they get a bad score. Ethically, whether that's right or wrong, is the question that DotEveryone want to start asking. Some scary examples of things that have happened recently that could have probably done better public engagement, or that are trying to do public engagement at the minute. So Google DeepMind and various other artificial intelligence companies are developing really complex networks now. So complex that even the developers themselves don't really know how these artificial intelligence systems are going to react and how they're going to learn. So that's quite a scary thing to think about. Maybe places that could have done better public engagement are Facebook and Cambridge Analytica stuff that everybody, I'm sure, knows about and has heard in the news. And the Sheffield tree felling, which talking to Nigel about earlier on how they could have potentially done better public engagement on that specific issues. So maybe they're not comparative, but they're examples of things that could probably do public engagement or do public engagement in a better way. What are we up against? This is a video that's not going to work, so I'm going to try put it on my iPad. Has anybody seen the new Google Assistant at the Google I/O event recently? Anybody not? No, cool. I'll show it anyway. So what Google have developed is they developed this. I think it's an artificial intelligence system that can have a conversation with a human and effectively pretend that it's a human. So their idea for this is that when you search on Google for what are the opening hours for Tesco's, for example, and it's the Easter weekend and Google doesn't know what the opening hours are for Tesco's, but they know the telephone number for Tesco's to phone up and find out. The idea is that this Google Assistant will automatically phone Tesco's, ask them what their opening hours are, and then update that information online. So we can try this. This is a conversation that the Google Assistant's having with somebody.
Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second.
That's the assistant speaking, that's a robot.
What time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have a 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
That's everybody applauding the end of the world. But no, you can see how issues like that and how new
That's
technology
been in the
can
news today.
be. Pardon?
The digital assistant's been in the news today.
Yeah. Oh, is it? What for particular?
Well, they say that they've now agreed to disclose when it's.
Yeah, so I've seen that as well. So they're talking that was a real conversation that the assistant had with a human, but it never disclosed that it was a robot, that it was an artificial intelligence system.
Have they tried to submit it to some kind of Turing test format?
To what? Sorry.
Turing test.
I'm not sure actually. Don't know. I don't know that. I know what they have done. The Google DeepMind is they are at the minute. Or they might have already finished a citizen's jury around how that might work and how that affects humans that use it, basically. But it's the only one that I've got an example of that have tried public engagement so far to help understand how the artificial intelligence system can make decisions. And in that example, I think they maybe learned after the fact that people are quite scared of this artificial intelligence system, and then they've released saying we're going to actually work out how to disclose to humans that they're speaking to a robot. So going back to the project, we developed several dilemmas such as could citizen scoring be a new social mobility lever? So that's the example I was talking about in China earlier. Is unrestricted internet access a right or a privilege? And that's actually the one we went with. So we had about 10 to 15 different ideas, but this one specifically is the one that we thought we could actually develop a story behind. What we did then is we designed some prototypes to try and work out how we could engage public on that particular issue. And we knew that the idea of unrestricted internet access is probably new to everybody because we effectively made it up. But the idea is that that'd be something that you could ask a person about and try and see how they engaged with a prototype. And when I say prototype, that means like we did a clickable website, threw it together really, really quickly, and I can show you that. I can show you that shortly. And we did some physical experiments as well, where actually we developed like board games and developed other different ways of being able to interact with that particular topic. And then we measured how engaged people were with that based on the conversation that happened, and we surveyed those people as well to try and get an idea of whether they felt engaged or not, and whether that matched our analysis as well. To then present all that back to DotEveryone. So this is an example of one of the prototypes. You're welcome to have a look at this as well. The link's there. There is a video clicking through this, but I'll just have to talk through it for now. So the idea is this particular prototype we developed an idea where you go through a set of questions and you become the Ministry of Technology. So this is a new government department and you are the decision maker, yes or no. You get at the start you get asked, should internet access be a right or should internet access be a privilege? We measure that information, and as you go through each case file, it'll present you with a case about somebody who's a gambling addict and uses gambling websites on a regular basis, and we put side by side the societal impact on somebody gambling and getting addicted to gambling websites, and on the flip side, the personal impact that if you blocked that person from using gambling websites, what might happen to society and what might happen to the person. And then you get to decide whether you allow them access or you block them access. Another example is somebody who suffers from dementia, who keeps ordering things online, isn't quite sure why they're doing it, and maybe forgets that they've actually ordered something and stuff keeps turning up at the door and they're spending lots of money. And again, the question asks, should we block that person from e-commerce websites, or should they allow that person free will? And that dilemma meant that somebody would sit and then they'd have to make decisions. And again, we're trying to understand how somebody could be engaged with some of these, complex issues, bit by bit. What else we got? So once we developed that prototype, we actually went and tested it. So this is something I was talking to Nigel about earlier, in actually developing ideas really, really quickly, and then getting them in front of the people that are going to potentially use that service or that product or whatever it is actually where the value is, and trying to find out how people interact with that and their reactions to it is where the value is, and you use that information to then improve it and to make improvements, and then ultimately to justify your decisions. So if you make a design decision, or if you are developing a contract that's worth 2.2 billion and over 25 years, that if you engage that public in an interesting way to begin with and explain the problem in an effective way, that you get much better results from the people that are going to use that service. So ideas today, really cheap, really quick to try out, especially in digital. You don't need to lock yourself in a room anymore, only to discover problems at the end of the project. You can do that work up front now, and it's what we do specifically at Paper every day. So just imagine, for example, that Sheffield City Council talked about engaged the public properly about what they needed to do before signing that 25-year, £2.2 billion project. Just a little bit of work up front, trying to understand how that would affect the citizens that are based in Sheffield. Could have had made a massive difference to all the problems that they're having today. And understanding the people using services is vitally important, really. Whether that's artificial intelligence or cutting down trees, the topic itself is irrelevant. But using these tools and being able to try ideas quickly and get them in front of people and start interacting with them, I think is what's ultimately most interesting. And it's never too late to start this. Maybe in the case of this one, it is too late. But still, I think to solve that problem and that communication, I think Cam was talking to me about it a few weeks back, in actually trying to resolve that problem, instead of it being a back and forth debate. What about if it was a constructive problem-solving, workshop, like what we do in the digital industry, for example? Maybe that would ease those tensions and allow people to work through those problems a lot easier. And again, it's all about how you engage that audience. So what did we find? Let me try and catch up with my notes, because I think I'm behind here. Okay, so what we found out in testing those particular prototypes is that metaphors really help. So we used an example, the people that we were testing with kept saying about regulating the internet and about saying yes or no as to whether somebody could use the internet. It's a bit like a driver's license. and as soon as they sort of connected those two dots, it all sort of made sense. So metaphors are always useful. Do the hard work to simplify the topic. So we'd put a lot of work into making that really complex issue really simple for somebody to understand that doesn't work in the industry. So by gamifying it a little bit and put it into this idea of it being the Ministry of Technology and you're the decision maker, made the topic more friendly and meant people that could understand that topic a lot better. People only had 10 minutes with the prototype and often changed their mind, which showed that actually the things that they were learning about and interacting with made them question their original thoughts in the first place. And it also means the barrier to entry is really low, so it's really easy to share that with people. It's really easy to accidentally come across it. So what can we do? Prototype ideas, don't worry if they're right or wrong. The idea is that they kind of need to be wrong because they're cheap, because they're quick. You work out your problems, really early on, and try them out and be transparent and collaborate. So a lot of people are scared of interacting with the people that are going to be using those services. I can understand why, but there really is no reason to be scared. Transparency and collaboration is always the way forward on those particular issues. So other questions are to think about is when you're developing smart cities, to think about how smart cities can affect the citizens that live in them, and what adverse effects it might create. So how could a smarter city create positive effects, but how could it create adverse effects? And what I'm trying to get at is that smart technology isn't always the right answer if it's implemented stupidly, basically. That's it. Job done.
Do we have any questions?
Flew through that, so apologies. Lou.
Faster? Yeah, choose who you would like to ask the question.
Okay. Well, I only know Nigel's name, so.
Couple of things that occurred to me whilst watching that. One of the key issues that cropped up around the debate on devolution locally was about how informed the public were about what was going on. The fact is, hardly at all, and the turnout of the mayoral election proved that. But one of the interesting things was where an investment was made to actually provide sufficient levels of information in, admittedly, a guided way. There was an organisation called Assembly North, or an event called Assembly North, which brought together effectively a citizens' jury or a citizens' panel to look at the options for devolution. When you give people sufficient information and you allow them the time to actually absorb that and to look at all the options that are available, they often come up with different decisions to what the decision makers come up with. And the fact was, the decision that the informed citizenry of South Yorkshire came up with was radically different to the top-down approach of devolution that we got. So I think this idea of involving citizens, it is one of the key issues to start with very early, and to inform them as much as possible of what the complexities are. Because if they get the chance to absorb that complexity.
There's also a balance as well, though, because one thing we found out with that as well is we heavily simplified that topic. Everybody that we tested with said, I would have liked more information, but on observing those people, actually they didn't really need much more information. They'd already worked out the topic, and they'd worked out the dilemmas, and they got through that problem. The next step then would probably be more information. So it's understanding how you break down what you give somebody, because there's again, thinking about engagement specifically, if you dump a massive pile of files on somebody's desk, they're going to go, not reading that at all. But if you put something in front of them, they can click through in 5 minutes and actually learn about it, and just spark enough interest for them to go, actually, yeah, I'm going to find out more information. That's more valuable than just going from one extreme to the other.
I like the idea of sort of, playful engagement to teach someone about a topic. I wonder actually if you've seen the game Papers, Please. It's an independent computer game where you play a border guard. Yeah, and you have to make immigration decisions for the people who come in.
It's one of the things I actually looked at. It's all like all cartoony in it, and
Yeah. You basically your salary based on getting the decisions right for the immigration rules. But then there are sort of special cases who come along and plead their case, and you can let them through anyway and reduce the salary that you get to pay feed your family as a result. So it's kind of like a moral dilemma thing, but through a game rather than through a questionnaire. I wonder though if you put any thought into how you avoid biasing the outcome by sort of leading people down a certain sort of thought with that that kind of approach.
Originally, we'd spent a lot of time on trying to get that language balanced. So when I was talking earlier about societal impact versus an individual impact, we tried to balance it that way. That if you've got a sort of for and against kind of thing, where like on the gambling addiction one, it might say, well, if you block him, then he, and this is off the top of my head, so it might be incorrect. If you block that individual, they're less likely to be addicted to gambling, and then more likely maybe to spend time with the family or have more spare cash to be able to improve their lives or whatever it is. On the flip side, you might say, well, if you block that person, then society has an excuse to block somebody's internet access when maybe you shouldn't actually be bothering with that at all. That's how we did that. And then in terms of individual specific language, we were trying to be careful about what language we used. I think some things in that prototype slipped through the net purely because of time. We just flew through it in a short space of time. Before to go back, I'd really concentrate on that a lot more. But the link, if you want to have a look at it, feel free to have a click through and see what you think. Anyway.
One more question.
Cool. I'll go this side of the room then.
I'll ask questions, but I'll phrase them as just something to consider, because I'm not sure there's a straightforward answer. One is, a lot of these techniques depends on who is doing the consulting and the level of trust which people have in that organisation or that authority.
What do you mean by who? Sorry.
Well, who? Well, for example, there was a case given of a scheme in Toronto where Google is apparently doing the consulting. Well, there's a lot of criticism that should you really be handing over the development of, say, a major urban extension to a commercial company? Is there likely to be more distrust of a commercial company in undertaking urban development in consultation than a well-liked and well-respected local authority? That would be one consideration. The other one would be, a lot depends on the context in which you're implementing it, because and come back to a local authority situation, they want to find ways of saving money. So instead of just improving the quality of consultation, they could just be using digital technology to reduce costs and actually distancing themselves from interacting.
It completely depends
with people.
On context. You're right. I suppose the Streets Ahead one's the easy one to use as an example, because it's the biggest one in the news. If they consulted in the right way to begin with, I think in that example they didn't at all, and that happens quite a lot on various different projects that happen all across the world. On the flip side, the Google DeepMind one is trying to do it in an opposite way, where they're trying to be a little bit more transparent, and they're trying to actually learn about what people think about those specific services, and then trying to tailor them to make that better for people. But yeah, I think this example is quite specific, because it's ultimately a website that you can click through. But the idea and the sort of the takeaway from this is that you can try these things really quickly and really cheaply, and we did these in space of a couple of weeks, and got a really clear idea of where we should go next with it, to get more information.
I think the direction should be applauded, because essentially complex decisions can go right or wrong, more often wrong, and the reason they go wrong is they haven't got enough information around you. So if you're a large organisation and you've got a new mechanism that you can go and test out, so focus groups of the past, you're trying to do something different with digital, maybe involve more people than a focus group approach. I think it's got to be the way to go, because you're bringing information into the consideration before the decision is made. So I think that is a terrific ambition.
Cool. Great. Thanks.
Okay, so pizzas are here. That's suggested if you're going to recharge glasses or bottles, and bring the pizzas over here. We'll start again at about 8 o'clock. Cheers. Thanks, Mark.
All right, no worries.